everyone. Yes, we're covering HannahTalksBodies today. I chose her because she has been super active, and to get through a year of her TikToks won't take us too long. I'm assuming about 2 to 3 parts. Something worth noting, though, is that she's been not super active for the past year, so we're going to go based off 2021 to 2022 from about June to June. And then we'll cover the last 2 as well. And without further ado, let's just jump into it.
Hello, I have an idea for a TV show. So, you know all the people who go into fat people's comment sections and comment, "Fat phobia doesn't exist." Well, the show would take those people, put them in bodysuits and prosthetic makeup to make them appear fat, and then they would each be randomly assigned a health issue, and it could be anything, the flu, an ear infection, lockjaw, whatever. And they will have to go to the doctor and try to get evidence-based medical care for that health issue. If the doctor provides treatment, the doctor will be given a novelty plaque that says, "You did your job." If the doctor does what we all expect them to do, which is to be a fat-phobic piece of shit, both the doctor and the contestant will be doused in Nickelodeon-style slime. If this gets picked up, I want a producer credit.
So, here's the thing. I understand that the fat acceptance community feels like doctors don't take them seriously, and to a certain extent, they're not entirely wrong. That being said, there's sometimes when they present things like they had a broken arm or a sinus infection or whatever, and it's presented like the doctor only just tells them to lose weight and doesn't prescribe them antibiotics, which I kind of find hard to believe. And the truth is that weight can play a role in a variety of things. It is hormonally active. It can impact the body in a variety of ways. I think it even reduces your immune system function. I don't remember for sure. Actually, let's take a look that up. Let's look that up real quick. So we're just taking a clip real quick from National Institutes of Health website that does say obesity, like other states of malnutrition. Oh, that's interesting. Like other states of malnutrition, is obesity considered a state of malnutrition? That's really interesting. Is known to impair immune function, and then it goes into how that goes about. So it can in fact affect the immune system, this is from a study, so therefore it is part of evidence-based care to tell you to lose weight even if you have something like the flu, because obesity can impair your immune system function. I mean, evidence-based care doesn't just mean giving you the medication to make it better, and I find it very hard to believe that for things that would require a antibiotic or something, I find it very hard to believe that the doctor would not give you that. I understand doctors being very skeptical about your illnesses. I once went in with pneumonia, and the doctor was listening to my lungs, and he's like, "Stop making noise with your mouth." I'm like, "I'm not making noise with my mouth." The wheezing was so bad in my chest, he thought I was deliberately making noises, and eventually just told me to breathe while take a deep breath while watching me. And then he believed me. So I think there's just a natural level of skepticism from doctors due to hypochondriacs and drug addicts and a variety of people that would seek something specific. So I understand that portion of it. That being said, telling you to lose weight is part of evidence-based medical care.
I've been thinking about something. Sacrificing time and energy to convince bigoted people that you are the exception to whatever stereotypes they have will always leave you feeling dissatisfied. I wasted years of my life trying to convince people that I was the exception to their fat phobia. I knew the stereotypes were that fat people were lazy, sloppy, and stupid, and so I devoted all of my energy to proving that I was hardworking, meticulous, and intelligent. But it never mattered, and even though I have all of those qualities, working so tirelessly to make them visible all of the time was never enough to convince people who were committed to othering me to actually accept me instead. I realized that I wasn't helping myself or other fat folks by trying to be seen as in compliance with an incorrect and oppressive belief system, because ultimately I was just validating their stereotypes, not my worthiness.
So here's the thing about that. I don't know if I would go so far as to say it's an oppressive belief system. I feel like I need a little bit more context as to what she's talking about here. That being said, in terms of trying to be performative in the way that you are not fitting into like stereotypical ideas, I understand her to an extent from a different perspective. As a preteen, teenager, young adult woman, I was in a lot of male oriented spaces, at least for the time. I was very into Yu Gi Oh! And Pokemon, and at the time, these were less gender neutral than they are now. And being into video games and card games and that sort of thing, there was a lot of like male dominated areas in these spaces. It was predominantly male. And so I would always be like trying to prove myself with the knowledge that I had of the directors and the developers and all of that, of these different video games, of these different games, of how I understood references. And no matter what, you will always be proving yourself if you try to go this route. I don't think that it's very helpful to try to prove yourself to people that already have a preconceived idea of you. It will always leave you dissatisfied. It will always leave you feeling a little empty, because once people have a preconceived notion, you can't really break it if they don't want to change their mind. So I understand what she's saying there. I don't think that this is exclusive to fat people, and I'm not sure I'm convinced that it's an oppressive belief system or if it's just a toxic form of gatekeeping. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this one.
Oh my God, I'm so sick of mainstream body positivity, because most mainstream body positivity is just straight-sized people reassuring other straight-sized people that they aren't fat. It's just a bunch of people saying things like, you're not fat, you're bloated. You're not fat, that's where your uterus is. Literally any excuse just to reassure their followers that their worst fear hasn't come true. So I just want to be really clear about something. I am not interested in soothing your fear of being fat. I am interested in creating a world that has no reason to fear fatness. I'm interested in seeing fat people treated with dignity and respect. I'm interested in seeing fat people gain access to the rights and resources we're currently denied. I'm interested in seeing fat people gain full and uninhibited access to healthcare, employment, travel, clothing, and more. That world is possible, and that's what we should be working toward. Oh my God.
So here's the thing. Whether you want to say that body positivity has one, it's certainly not like the mainstream body positivity. There's multiple sections to the body positivity movement, even in the mainstream area of it, and a portion of it is like you're beautiful, that's not fat, and a lot of it is like really dumb, like that's not your fat, that's where your uterus is. No, that's fat. Let's call a spade a spade. But that's not, certainly not what she's getting at. And the thing is, she says she wants us to have a society where no one has to fear fatness. But the thing is that there will always be a reason to fear fatness, because obesity wreaks havoc on the body. And so even if it became acceptable in a cultural beauty culture form, health-wise, it would still be an issue. As for fat people gaining uninhibited access to medical care, they do have uninhibited access to medical care, at least as much as anyone else in the U.S. Like, there's issues with the medical care system that is not what I'm referring to. But I think she's referring to, like, that evidence-based medical care thing, which we've already talked about. They have equal access as a thin person. Doctors have dealt with a variety of people, and they are prone to, just like other humans, to make mistakes every once in a while. I'm not saying that there aren't issues with doctors, but I would say that it's not more prevalent for fat people than it is for women, for people with chronic health issues, XYZ. When it comes to employment, that is based on your ability most of the time. I don't know of any employer that's like, we're not going to hire you because you're fat, with the exception of like the modeling industry. And it's also largely based on, can you do the job? Because if it requires to be on your feet for 80% of the day and you can't handle that, then you are not qualified for the job. Travel, I'm guessing this is referring to airline seats. They can have access to travel and airline seats, but they may have to buy a second seat. Because if your body is spilling over into another person's seat, or let's say not another person's seat, but just another seat, then you should have to pay for that additional seat because you were going outside of your pre-prescribed area to inhabit for the duration of the flight. If you are taking up more than that space, then you have to pay more. Clothing. We do have plus-size clothing stores. If you are so big that you cannot fit into a size 6X at Torrid, then this, honestly, I think that having access to fashionable clothing is the least of your concerns right now. But those are my opinions.
I'm truly loving how the fat acceptance movement allows people to grow, because it's not only teaching people that health and body size are not direct corollaries, which is true, but also the bigger point, which is that health is not a requirement for people to be deserving of respect or equality. We hear this issue come up all the time in conversations around fatness where people say things like, well, so long as you're healthy, which is basically to say that if a fat person does not have the privilege of health, then they deserve abuse and discrimination, whereas I as a healthy fat person don't, which is just nonsense.
I feel like that's taking what's essentially a colloquial saying that could, it's almost like a nicety half the time. Like, people don't think much about it when they're saying it, and I think you're putting connotations on it that aren't necessarily there. I don't know, apart from those that are just, bigoted towards anyone with a disability, putting those people aside, I think anyone that uses this term isn't like, well, if you're fat and not healthy, then I don't have to treat you with any level of respect. I don't know anyone that thinks like that. This saying, well, so long as you're healthy, I think one is also just talking about health behaviors in that, well, so long as you're exercising and trying to eat right and stuff, you do you. And while what you do in your everyday life is no one's business necessarily, if it's part of the conversation, then it's just, I don't know, I've always thought of it more as a nicety, as a colloquial saying, as something that didn't hold much weight to it. And to a certain extent, and while I'm sure an argument can be made that, well, that's part of the issue, is that it's so ingrained in the culture and blah, 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 sometimes people say things just to get out of the conversation. I'm one of those people. I don't think that so long as you're healthy is anything saying about health. I think the people just start to get uncomfortable and they want out of the conversation. Like, they don't agree with you, but they don't want to start an argument. So they say, well, so long as you're healthy, to get out of the conversation. That's shit that I do. I actually don't give a shit about whether you're a healthy or unhealthy fat person. I just don't want to talk about it anymore. So, I mean, I don't know.
Understanding this is important because it's extremely tempting in the face of prejudice to cling to the health that we experience and try to present it as a representation of our moral value in an attempt to try to alleviate some of the pain that fat phobia brings.
Honestly, with the whole thing with this moral value bullshit, honestly, I feel like the fat acceptance movement is really preoccupied with morality. I've even been told, like, from some of the people that come out and saying, you think you're a good person, but you're not a good person. This has nothing to do, my political opinions on fat acceptance have nothing to do with morality, has nothing to do with whether I think I'm a good or bad person. Quite frankly, I think I'm a neutral person. I don't think morality plays nearly as much a role in everyday life as people think it does. I think whether you're a good or a bad person is irrelevant if your actions are shit. And a lot of people put morality based on intention. And then some people put morality based on impact, and I don't think that either one of those wholesale is right. And I also think that because morality is so fucking subjective, that I can be a saint to one person and a devil to another. You want to put morality on someone saying, well, so long as you're healthy, when in reality it's probably a very neutral comment. It's probably not saying anything about it, and what you are inferring it as, how you are interpreting that comment is what determines its more value to you and you alone. It's just such, I think, trying to create I think the morality argument is a way to shame people into their speech patterns. It's a way to shame, like, it feels very much like a control tactic half the time that I see from the fat acceptance movement. And I don't like this constant putting of morality on everything. I don't think it's morally wrong or right to be fat. I think that being fat has impacts, mostly negative, on both the individual and those that have to serve and help the individual. Does that make it morally wrong? I don't fucking know. That's not something I have such a I struggle so much with these morality arguments because it feels like it's a way of sidestepping the actual issue. I think once we get into conversations about whether something is morally right or wrong, we are ignoring the practicalities and the functional issues around the issue itself. Obesity is not about being morally right or wrong, but it does impact your joints, it does impact your health. You not being able to buy clothes at regular stores, not being able to fit into airline seats, struggling to find seating at restaurants, having to double check everywhere you go, having to use the disability, the like accessibility bathroom and stuff, which means the person in the wheelchair has to wait longer. Those are all functional issues around obesity. I really don't give a fuck about the morality of the situation. I care about the impacts of the issue at hand. So I don't know. Some people are going to disagree with me on this. Some people are going to say, well, that's, connected to morality. And I don't view it in a moral lens to me. I don't view any of this in a moral lens. I think that there is a supreme selfishness in obesity to the point where, like, if you're injuring medical professionals, is that morally wrong? I don't know. I struggle so much with the concept of morality because it is so subjective. I think it is socially disadvantageous and inconsiderate to be obese. Whether you want to put a morality spin on that is something else. I tend to view things more in the frame of social cooperation and social dysregulation rather than morality, for me personally.
But when we do that, we are unintentionally, or sometimes intentionally, taking fat people who do not experience health and throwing them under the bus. I'm truly loving how the...
So I'd like your thoughts on this whole thing, because I feel like I rambled some.
Would you like another example of why the whole "but your health" argument is bull? So diet culture and fat phobia trick us into thinking that we can't trust our bodies. They make us think that when our bodies tell us what they need, that they must be lying to us.
I really hate this. This is just a pet peeve of mine, but I really hate the acting like the body and the mind are two completely separate things, and the body is communicating with the mind and the body is telling you what it needs. The body and the mind are essentially inseparable. All right, they're essentially inseparable because what happens in the body affects the mind and vice versa. Number one. Number two, your body telling you what it needs. The body, because there's so much weird shit in our food and different preservatives and stuff that interact with the body in different ways, it can affect hunger cues. It can affect a lot of perception of what's going on with the body. High calorie dense foods can also not be terribly filling, meaning that you have enough energy to get you through the day, but it may not have been enough to be satiating your stomach. What your body burns and how full your stomach is can be two separate things, which is part of the reason why some people are really into volume eating, because the stomach stays full with all the fiber and the large amounts of food that you're eating, but the energy expenditure is lower than, say, like McDonald's Big Mac. But I don't really like the body can easily be tricked. The body is easily fooled. And that's why you, as a conscious, evolved being, should be able to understand that your body can and is manipulated by the stuff that you put inside it. That sounded wrong. You guys know what I mean. By the nutrients you put inside it. By the nutrients. The nutrients in the food you put inside it. Anyway, let's continue listening to Hannah.
us, or that we must know better than they do. When they tell us they're hungry, we're not supposed to feed them. When they tell us they're tired, we're not supposed to rest them. We're supposed to keep pushing, power through. And so when people try to lose weight, rather than feeding and resting our bodies, we're actually starving and exhausting them and putting them through immense stress. This is why I have...
Okay, but can I just say something? So, especially with sugar, I'm sorry, but as I've been decreasing my sugar intake, one, I get hungry less often. I think there's something, I don't know the exact science of it, but at least for me, it seems like eating excessive amounts of sugar will also trigger hunger responses later. And sugar, when you have that sugar crash, affects how tired you feel. So, believe it or not, if you feel tired, sometimes what you need is movement. You wake up with it. That's why, like, after a big meal, I prefer to go for a walk rather than laying down. If you lay down, the digestion stuff does make you tired, and it can still make you tired, but there's something about walking that helps aid in the digestion and helps with, for me at least, regulate energy levels. So I don't think that simply because you feel tired, you should rest. It's not that that's not the case a lot of the time, but depending on the food that you're eating, sometimes what your body really needs is a little bit of movement. It doesn't have to be like this whole gung-ho, high intensity workout sort of thing. It can just be going for a walk. And sometimes, depending on what you eat, you can feel hungry without actually needing food.
Absolutely no patience for people who scream about health in response to any conversation where fat people are treated like people. Because you don't care. You would rather have fat people become mentally and physically ill if it meant they could become thin than just let them be fat. It's never been about health. Would you...
So here's the thing. You want to be fat, be fat. My issue isn't what you do with your own body. It is what you put on other people because you're fat. If you're eating a shit ton of sugar and you're like, I'm always so tired, and someone's like, well, maybe like the sugar can cause a sugar crash, maybe cut back on the sugar. That's not policing you. That's not trying to put you into being mentally and physically ill. That is, sometimes sugar can wreak havoc on the fucking body. Like, you want to live in your own la la land, fine. That's fine. Go ahead, do whatever the fuck you want. But don't act like me saying you're contributing to how your body feels. You're contributing to your fatigue. You're contributing to some of these issues, and then get fucking mad at me for it. Don't, like, you want to do your own thing, fine, but then you have to deal with the consequences, which means that you may not fit into airline seats, you may not fit into clothing, you may be tired more often because you're eating a shit ton of sugar. Or maybe it's not just sugar. Sometimes just eating a shit ton of food constantly, or what have you, can cause fatigue. Not all fat people necessarily eat constantly. Not all fat people necessarily have huge amounts of sugar, but those that are complaining about fatigue, I can't help but wonder.
Oh, what's this? A comprehensive long-term study with excellent methodology about the relationship between weight, behaviors, and health? Let's talk about it. In this study, researchers looked at 11,761 cisgendered men and women of varying ages, races, and weights. They asked the subjects to engage in some combination of 4 different health-promoting behaviors, and the health of the subjects was tracked for an average of 170 months, which is about 14 years of data collected per person. The 4 health-promoting behaviors were 5 or more servings of fruits and veggies per day, exercising more than 12 times per month, limiting alcohol up to 1 drink per day for cis women and up to 2 drinks per day for cis men, and not smoking at all. And just want to point out that these are not healthy habits for everyone. I have chronic pain, and exercising 12 times per month would be excruciating. Or also there are people with digestive diseases for whom eating 5 servings of fruits and veggies per day would cause a lot of damage. So these are very general concepts. Now let's get to those results. On this graph, the vertical axis is health hazards. So the taller the bar, the more health risks there are. And then the horizontal axis is how many of the 4 behaviors were adopted. And you can see here that the participants were divided into 3 categories based on their BMI. Now, BMI is trash, but since that's what they use, those are the words we have to use in order to talk about this study. So the lightest colored bar represents people in the, quote, normal weight category. The middle bar is people in the, quote, overweight category. And then the darkest bar is for people in the, quote, obese category. So you can see here in this first section where none of the health promoting behaviors are being utilized that there was a big difference in health hazards between the three weight categories. And to be clear, that doesn't mean that weight is causing that difference. That difference can also be caused by the fact that fat people are denied medical care or receive far worse care when we do get medical care, or the fact that fat people experience immense stress from all the stigma and prejudice we face. Regardless, what you can see.
I'm sorry, but citation fucking needed. Like you're citing based on these healthy habits, and you're like, well, these people, it may not just be because of their weight or what they do or whatever. It could be because of all of these other reasons that aren't mentioned at all in the study. You are projecting stuff onto something that is not addressing those issues. So this is just baseless claims that you're making here and projecting onto this when it's just talking about four specific healthy habits for cisgendered people over the course of 14 years.
Here is that after only one health promoting behavior is adopted, the health risks both dropped and compressed between all of the BMI categories dramatically. And by the time we get to all four health promoting behaviors, not only are the health risks extremely low for everyone, but there is virtually no difference in the health risks between all three different weight categories, despite the fact that the weight of the participants did not change. Weight is a terrible predictor of health, and every single time we study other factors like genetics, environment, and behavior, this is what we find. Oh, what's that?
So I do actually want to take a look at this study, but one thing I want to say is that the fat acceptance movement, I'm sorry for my dog, something's going on with her, but the fat acceptance movement likes to act like we use weight as the sole predictor of health, as the sole determinant of whether you're healthy or not, and that's simply not the case. It's just the most obvious one on a person. Great, you're making all of these changes, and the hazard ratio, you know what, I feel like I really need to take a look at this because I feel like she's leaving stuff out. So, healthy habits and morality in overweight and obese individuals. Okay, so this is in the results section of the study. And it's directly under the figure. And it says, in survival analysis of individual healthy habits stratified by BMI, smoking was associated with increased mortality regardless of baseline weight. Consumption of more than 5 servings of fruits and vegetables was associated with decreased mortality in normal weight and overweight individuals, but not in obese individuals. Regular exercise was associated with decreased mortality in normal weight and obese individuals, but failed to reach statistical significance in overweight individuals. Moderate alcohol consumption was associated with decreased mortality in only normal weight individuals. The proportionality assumption was tested with all survival analysis using Schoenfeld residuals, which indicated that the proportional assumption was upheld. So, but the thing is that it looks like obese individuals only benefited from regular exercise and smoking, but the consumption of fruits and vegetables didn't really help them that much, and moderate alcohol consumption didn't help that much, which I find interesting. So let's take a look at the discussion. So the discussion isn't terribly long. I'm going to just read it to you guys. The results of this study reinforce the association between healthy lifestyle habits and decreased mortality risk regardless of baseline BMI. This finding is of great importance to both patients and healthcare providers whose perceptions about BMI may lead them to believe that only obese and or overweight individuals require regular counseling about lifestyle adjustments. So this is something that's, because if anything, it seems more in line with not overly focusing on lifestyle habits of the obese and the overweight, but also normal weight individuals, since they were the ones that benefited across the board. Although evidence suggests that patients across the BMI spectrum should adhere to a healthy lifestyle to optimize health, many patients with a normal BMI may believe exercise and healthy eating, for example, are less important for them as long as they maintain a low BMI. In fact, the patient view may be reinforced by healthcare providers who also are influenced by BMI and are therefore significantly more likely to counsel obese patients regardless of healthy lifestyle than normal weight patients. So if anything, this seems to be leading to not that, your weight doesn't matter, but that even if you're normal and maintaining a low BMI, you should still, stop smoking, drink alcohol in moderation, eat lots of fruits and veggies, and exercise, which I don't think are controversial statements. If anything, it just seems that it's overlooked more often in lower BMI individuals. The lack of time spent counseling patients to adopt healthy lifestyle is reason for concern, and research suggests that this failure to counsel about healthy behaviors is common. For example, one study found that primary care providers spent minimal time addressing nutrition, exercise, or smoking. Such a lack of focus on counseling is particularly troubling because counseling has been shown to be effective in decreasing smoking, increasing fruit and vegetable consumption, moderating alcohol consumption, and increasing exercise frequency. So if anything, like if we go back to the evidence-based healthcare, doctors counseling you on eating more fruits and veggies and exercising is evidence-based care, because through those counseling, people are more likely to adhere to it. And the pooled analysis that included all individuals in the cohort, normal weight, overweight, and obese, the adoption of each additional healthy habit decreased all-cause mortality between 29% and 85%. To put this in perspective, statins decrease all-cause mortality by 12% in individuals at high risk for cardiovascular disease. Given the tremendous benefits of healthy lifestyle, policies and programs that encourage adherence to healthy lifestyles should be encouraged both locally and at a national level. This study has several important strengths and weaknesses. The major strengths include the complex sampling of the NHANES, which makes the findings generalizable to population of the United States at large, and the accuracy of National Death Index at assessing mortality. The study also has several noteworthy weaknesses. First, the cross-sectional nature of the interview portion of the survey did not account for changes in lifestyle habits over time. This may be considered a limitation, even though lifestyle habits seem to be relatively stable in adulthood. Second, the survey was dependent on the accuracy of self-report of healthy habits. That's interesting. So it was reliant on self-report, which self-report is going to be less reliable than other forms of tracking. So that's interesting. Third, although healthy habits were associated with decreased mortality, association does not prove causation. Finally, control variables were limited to age, race, and sex in the survival analysis because of uncertainty about how lifestyle interacted with other commonly used control variables such as socioeconomics or marriage. Conclusion. Overall study reinforces previous findings about the critical importance of adhering to healthy habits. Future studies might focus on effective ways to increase adherence to healthy habits and the cost effectiveness of such efforts. So, I understand what she's saying in that it showed the hazard ratio, but a couple of things that are worth noting is that it is a hazard ratio for all-cause mortality by body mass index, and the normal weight individuals were still lower than the other two categories. But this isn't really, it's stratifying them based on weight, and that's so we can see it across. And yes, they're similar in ratio, but notice how the normal weight is still lower than the other two categories, meaning that weight can still play a factor. No one is saying that weight is the all-determining factor of whether you're going to die an early death. No one's saying that weight is the all-determining factor of whether you're healthy or not. But it still plays a role, as we can just see from this, because the all-cause mortality ratio is still lower for normal weight individuals than it is for overweight and obese. And it is also worth noting that in this study, it is using obese as an BMI of greater than 30. Now, to give you an idea of what this looks like, I am a 5'6" cisgendered woman. And when I was 190 pounds, which was only about 10 pounds ago, I was considered obese and would have been put in this realm here. So there's also a separation that is not happening here from the obese and the super obese and the super morbidly obese. The obese, the super obese, the morbidly obese, and the super morbidly obese. there's it's like obesity 1, obesity 2, obesity 3, but then I feel like after I think obesity 3 is like morbidly obese, and then there's even super morbidly obese, which I don't think was accounted for here. I wish I knew what the highest BMI of one individual, what was the highest BMI represented in this study. Let's see. I'm going to just see if I can find that real quick. Okay, so I've looked through the different data and figure sets. I've skimmed the methods and everything. Nothing tells us what the highest BMI represented was. It only goes based off those with a BMI of 30 or greater, which is low level. A BMI of 30 is a very low level obesity. A BMI of 30, just 30, is a very low level of obesity that I'm sure the healthy habits included would make a big difference. I'm curious, though, if we looked at a BMI that would be considered super morbidly obese and how well these factors would help with it. Like, there's the thing that I feel isn't really addressed with the fat acceptance community when we look at research studies like this is that there's degrees of obesity. They're just as they have their like fatness hierarchy. I'm curious, weigh the people that identify as I forget what the categories were, but it's like small fat, like mid fat, medium fat, super fat, and infinifat, I think. I don't remember. But like I guarantee that the health of an infinifat individual would not probably have a higher hazard ratio than what's represented here, because this is representing at the lowest levels of obesity. We don't even know what the highest BMI represented in this is. So for general thoughts of moving forward and investigating this, yes, this is a fantastic place to start. It's also worth noting this was from 2011, so I'm curious if there was ever a follow-up study on this. But I would like to see a study involving the super morbidly obese individuals and whether these four healthy habits, what kind of ratio we would see here. Those are just some of my issues with how she's presenting this, because for the fat acceptance community, from what we've seen, even a BMI of 30 may qualify as a small fat at best. But there's even some that in the small fat area that it may not, they're like, no, you're still like mid-size or whatever. So I don't know, there's some issues that I have, not with the study itself. The study itself seems fine, but with how Hannah is presenting the study.
When I was still engaging in dieting and disordered eating, I had a very restrictive view on beverages. I pretty much only ever drank water or coffee and felt guilt anytime I drank anything with calories in it. The idea that you could drink something purely for pleasure and for no other reason felt completely foreign and unsafe to me. This was one of the last vestiges of my eating disorder that lingered on well into my recovery. And when I discovered it was there, I realized that I had this whole category of things that could bring me pleasure that I haven't even explored yet. And I got excited thinking about the possibilities. And so now I'm almost 30, and I'm rediscovering all of these rich, sweet, delicious drinks I never gave myself permission to enjoy before. And it has been so fun and wholesome and freeing. When I was still engaged...
So a couple of things to note. If you want to, you can drink whatever you want. No one is gonna penalize you for drinking something because you enjoy it. During the summer, I have like a cookie crumble mocha frappuccino from Starbucks. Like that's my treat during the summer. I have it 2 or 3 times during the course of the summer. But the point is that it's not an issue if you want to drink it just because you like it. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is if you're drinking it consistently every day. High sugar drinks can fuck with you in a variety of ways. The issue is that you don't think about the calorie intake for those. And I know for the fat acceptance group, thinking about calories would be an issue in and of itself. But the thing is that calories that don't fill you up, that don't satiate you, that don't help you get through the day, because your body is just going to work through it like that. And on top of that, a lot of them have excessive amounts of sugar in them. So if you want to have like a high sugar drink because you enjoy it, by all means, I don't see an issue with that. If it's a treat and you're planning on it being a treat, I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of the issues around eating and drinking high calorie foods and beverages comes from, are you doing it as a form of habit, or a coping mechanism, or is it like an intentional treat for yourself? I don't think that there's an issue with treating yourself to a high calorie beverage or a high calorie meal every once in a while, but be very conscious that you're doing that, and drink it and enjoy it, or eat it and enjoy it for what it is, and then get back to healthier eating. Eating like it all the time is what probably leads to a lot of medical issues. So also completely off topic, Hannah says she's almost 30 in September of 2021. That means Hannah's younger than I am, which surprised me. I thought she was in her mid-30s. I thought she was just like a couple of years older than me. So that kind of surprised me. I don't know why, but I thought she was older than me. But let's move on.
Hi, I'm a therapist and I also used to work in politics and advocacy. I'm going to share with you something I tell my clients. Feeling anger or sadness about the state of our world is completely justified, and my hope is that those feelings... It just dawned on me how many people don't understand how rarely fat people actually receive evidence-based medicine from doctors. One time, I went in for an ear infection and the doctor told me to lose weight. You know what thin people get? Antibiotics.
So, you go in for an ear infection. I'm only saying this because I dealt with a bout of a variety of ear infections for a couple of years. I don't know why. It like cleared up on its own. I don't know why, but there is a type of ear infection that does not require antibiotics. It's swimmer's ear. It's when something gets into the outer, like, into your ear, but it doesn't get behind the eardrum. And it's the skin that's inside the ear that's infected. And so you would have steroid drops for that. I've heard some things that weight can play a factor in that, but I don't know anything for sure on that. Actually, you know what? While I'm on the computer, might as well look it up. Alright, so I looked into it, and unfortunately I kept getting a lot of kind of interesting articles on how multiple ear infections in childhood are linked to obesity later in life. That seemed like apparently a very hot topic that I wasn't aware of, and it's a fairly recent topic. I mean, a couple of the studies that I looked at were from 2021. Like, that's a whole thing, but that's not the subject of this right now. So I'm going to put that off for a later date. I did see a couple, but not like an actual study, just some things from some health organizations that apparently fatty foods can increase the likelihood of an ear infection, but all of this was around a middle ear infection, not an outer ear infection, which was what I initially thought Hannah was talking about, like the swimmer's ear. But it looks like middle ear infections can be caused by excessive eating of fatty foods. There was one that said obesity can, like, make it more difficult for blood to circulate to the inner and middle ear. That can lead to more ear infections, but again, that wasn't really substantiated with actual studies as far as I could see. And I don't want to spend an hour looking for that right now. But let me put it this way. If it was a middle ear infection, I have a hard time believing that the doctor, if it was a middle or inner ear infection, I have a hard time believing that a doctor did not prescribe a antibiotic. I don't believe it was an inner ear infection because she doesn't make any mention of how, like, she couldn't walk or anything like that, which is what an inner ear infection would cause balance issues and stuff, where middle and outer ear infections tend to be more pain related, although a middle ear infection I believe can rupture the eardrum. I all this information that I'm telling you guys just comes from my experience, so by all means do your own research on this, but from the sounds of it, there is at least a tangential link, even if it's argued in the medical community about how obesity affects ear infections. So while the doctor may have said that if you needed an antibiotic, I have a hard time believing that they would not have given it to you. At the very least, they probably would have given you ear drops, steroid ear drops, if it was an outer ear infection. So I'm wondering if they ruled it as an outer ear infection, gave Hannah the drops, and told her to lose weight because it would maybe a blood circulation issue, or maybe it just helps. Maybe they're in the camp that believes that obesity plays a role in the ear infections, and we're advising her to lose weight. And so she got that and figured she wasn't getting adequate care because she got the drops and not an antibiotic. But depending on the ear infection, you don't necessarily need an antibiotic. So I don't know. There's so much not represented here. I'm just kind of covering all my bases.
One time I found a lump and I made an emergency appointment to get a cancer screening. It was at an OBGYN, and as soon as the doctor walked in, he didn't look at me, he didn't introduce himself, he looked at my chart and he said, "You'd have an easier time getting pregnant if you lost weight." I told him, "I'm not here for fertility treatment, I'm here for a cancer screening." And he said, "Oh, okay," and started the appointment, never said sorry. And I would need to make a 20-part series for the saga I went through last year when I needed spinal surgery for a...
So before she gets into the spinal surgery thing, I just want to go back to the OBGYN. A lot of people that go to the OBGYN, there's, of course, annual screenings, cancer screenings, and then fertility treatments. And perhaps they've had a lot of fertility treatment people throughout the day, and they assumed. Should they have said sorry? I don't know. That I wouldn't necessarily expect the doctor to say sorry because they had mistook me coming for fertility treatment when I came in for a cancer screening. That seems a little nitpicky to me, but whatever. And they're not wrong that losing weight would help with conception, but I mean, she wasn't there anyway. It was an assumption on the doctor's part. I don't think that it was as malicious as she's making it sound.
Lifelong spinal defect that had nothing to do with my weight. And this is the norm. It's typical for this to happen. It just dawned on me.
So far she didn't, she's like, this is typical for it to happen. You didn't really present anything that I felt was wildly off base for a doctor to say to you. It was definitely like a slanted presentation, very clearly a slanted presentation, but I need more context for some of the things. What kind of ear infection did you have, and what treatment did you actually get? Because I find it hard to believe that the doctor just said you're fat, lose weight, and sent you home with an ear infection. Again, I want to be clear, I have zero evidence of this at all. I'm making a complete assumption, but I'm thinking that she had something equivalent to swimmer's ear, which is an outer ear infection, and he gave her steroid drops instead of an antibiotic and told her to lose weight because maybe that doctor subscribed to the circulation things with the ears that I mentioned, and Hannah took offense to that. The fertility treatment misunderstanding just seems, again, like she took offense and wanted the doctor to apologize and didn't want the doctor to apologize. I don't know. It just seems kind of nitpicky to me. And I feel like there's not enough information given.
If you've heard people talking about anti-fat bias but you don't really know what that is or what that looks like, I've got some resources for you. First, I created a whole video course on this very topic that's available for free in the Dive Through app, so go check that out. First, we have What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat by Aubrey Gordon, also known as Your Fat Friend, who is an incredible essayist, general writer, and podcast host of Maintenance Phase. This one is mandatory reading. Then we have Fearing the Black Body, the racial...
So we know the issues with Fearing the Black Body. I might have recited a whole deep dive on that. I've honestly been thinking about I'm going to just move on from here. But I've honestly been thinking about revisiting the fat acceptance literature and doing another pick apart like I did with the Virtue Tovar book. But I'm not really sure how I want to approach it. I don't know if I really want to do a read aloud of the entire book like I did before. So I'm not sure how I want to approach these yet. If you guys have any ideas, I don't mean to make you guys give me ideas for content, but I'm just kind of curious, what would you guys like? like a full-on reading of it with maybe some commentary like I did with the Richard Tovar thing, which I'm not sure I really want to do. Chapter synopsises, where I just kind of give a synopsis of the chapter and then my thoughts, maybe. I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to approach this yet. It's an idea that I've had, though, for a little while, and I'm not sure what I want to do with it.
There are tons of myths and stereotypes about eating disorders, and those myths and stereotypes lead to people with eating disorders being frequently undiagnosed and untreated, especially when it comes to men, people of color. Something I don't think we talk about enough is the fact that anti-fat bias is often performative. I frequently encounter individuals who have close relationships with people in their lives who they love and respect who are fat, and they know that fatness doesn't make someone less competent, less capable, or less worthy, but who still engage in fat-phobic behavior with certain people in certain settings. And this is because being cruel or dismissive to fat people is not only socially acceptable, but it's encouraged. So much so that harassing fat people can even be a way for people, and especially men, to bond and gain social capital. We see this all the time in gaming chats, Reddit threads, trolling campaigns, and also in person with bullying and harassment. In these types...
Okay, I need some context for the bullying and harassment in person outside of, like, a K-12 school. But when it comes to, but I'm sorry, but your example of Reddit threads and trolling comments, welcome to the internet. That's not exclusive to fat people. I don't think that it has anything to do with what we view as okay or not okay. Vast majority of people are against Nazis. But there will be Nazis in your trolling comments making, comments. I think the vast majority of people would view racism as bad, and yet there's racist comments using slurs all the time. I think a lot of people are against, rape threats, and yet women get rape threats all the time in trolling comments, and I'm sure there's a selection of YouTube communities that would also advocate for that. It's the internet. It has nothing to do with your oppression. It just has to do with the fact that there are vile people out there that will say shit. So, that's not a good example to me. I'm sorry, but it's not.
Types of settings, fat-phobic behavior is expected, or else the person won't be accepted as a valid member of the group. So even if the person has a parent, sibling, friend, or even a romantic partner who's fat, they may still choose to say or do fat-phobic things in order to be accepted in their social group.
I really need an example of what fat-phobic things they say or do.
But the performative nature of this behavior doesn't diminish the very real harm that it creates. And ultimately, all it ends up doing is making life worse for fat people, including for the people they claim to love.
Alright, so we've gotten about halfway through her year in the TikTok. So we're going to I'm going to take a break here and we'll finish it next time. So far, it's again more of the oppression Olympics thing that I've seen with the fat acceptance community. I've said my piece on each of her videos. We'll finish this up next time, and I'm just gonna kind of leave it there for today. I'd love to hear your comments on any of the TikToks that we've reviewed today, though. Personal life, my weight has been all over the fucking map. I went all the way up to 184, went back down to 181, went back up to 183, and right now I'm at 182.5. Don't know what's going on with my weight there. I am currently embroidering a set of pillowcases. It has a lighthouse picture on it, and I'm making a lot of progress, and I'm very happy about it. I'm playing an otome game called Jack-chan, and I fucking love it. I love each of the love interests. It's very sweet, and I meant to comment on it last time, but for some reason the recording cut off. I'm going to leave this on for a couple of minutes after I'm done, in the hopes that everything makes it into the recording. I have a variety of favorites in there. There isn't anyone that I disliked. If anyone's been following my Twitter, Neji, who a lot of people told me was a red flag, but is a very fun character. He has red flags, but it's mostly trauma. It's mostly trauma for that poor guy. So I feel bad for Neji. Right now I'm at the last love interest before I get to the true route, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the true route holds. There were a couple of, like, I really liked Mitsuki and So as like my top two, with Suzu and Kai being like middle of the road, and Kai's who I'm working on now, right now he's like in a solid middle realm. Neji I liked, but there was it was the saddest route in the game for me, and I really just wanted something light, so he just didn't resonate with me so much this time. And then Fumi, who was just kind of boring, at least for me. But if you are following The Remarried Empress, which has been uploading a chapter every Sunday, oh fuck, Rashta is getting her just desserts, and I love that Sovieshu regrets his fucking decisions. But what the fuck did Kaufman do with that love potion? Why would you do this? Why would you do this? Oh my god, and now it looks like he's going to, like, spoilers, I guess, but it is spoiler, but, like, now it looks like he's gonna fall in love with Rashta? What the fuck? No, Trashta should stay trash. I don't want I don't want her to have a new admirer at all. But, can't wait to see where that's going. Plug in real quick for my Dumping Ground channel. I am still doing the Commenter's Choice for Amnesia Memories, if you want to get into Otome at all. I have a couple months ago, and unfortunately kind of fell off the rails, and I'm currently working through on editing some. I want to get like a year's worth done before I actually start posting them. But I'm actually reading through the Remarried Empress web novel version of it, not the manhwa, but the visual novel, which has a little bit more information, and I'm hoping to upload it within a couple of months to get like a full year done. I have a couple of different projects for that one, for that channel going on, mostly various forms of reading, but I'm really excited about them, and if any of that sounds interesting to you guys, please check out my Dumping Ground channel. And I think that's about all I have to say for today. I kind of feel like I finally crossed a hurdle in things that I've been dealing with. I still have some stressors that are like constantly on my mind, but I feel like more like I'm in a stable place now. So we're getting back into our year of the TikToks, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourselves.